not do it again.
Sure. I haven't done the Boise drive to a PTQ from Seattle yet. And I kind of want to. It's like 8 hours, but it's PTQ. I kind of want to relive my my younger days.
Yeah. There's a reason they were your younger days. That's the takeaway that I had from my.
This is true. I've got bad knees now. I don't know if I can sit in a car for that long. BBD on your right, green-red monsters. Kyle Abell on your left. He's playing mono-blue devotion. Anything interesting about this devotion deck here? Looks pretty stock. There's one Gale Rider sliver. And
nice.
And there's some Mizium skins here too. There are 2 of those. Which I would not be surprised to not see BBD play around, honestly, because it's not a stock card in a mono blue devotion deck.
Yep. And I know we've seen some people move to the Flyman sliver in part to make Biden a little more powerful, a little more reliable.
And also put those Mutavaults in the air as Brian's going to start off with a Stomping Ground, push himself down to 18, and an Elvish Mystic as we are underway here in round number 2. There's a Judge's Familiar there from Abell, and he'll pass the turn back to Brian. So we'll see if Brian has anything interesting to ramp into here. He's going to play Temple of Abandon. He's going to start by scrying. Looks like he has a Scavenging Ooze in his hand. What's the contents of this deck here?
So the creature base is 4 Elvish Mystic, 3 Scavenging Ooze, 4 Rampager, 4 Storm Breath Dragon, 3 Stillman Caryatids, 3 Boon Satyrs, and 4 Pelukrinos. And then the spells are 3 Zendegos, Reveler, 4 Domery, 1 Garrett Collar piece as the Planeswalkers, 2 Flesh Bloods, and 2 Mizium Mortars. Flesh Blood is a split card, basically being played for the red-green half, but Brian actually can generate black mana off of Sylvan Caryatid.
Got it. The Judge's Familiar is going to come across for 1, knock Brian down to 17. Frostburn Weird will be the follow-up play for Abell, and he'll pass the turn back. So, a bit of a roadblock here. Mono Blue Devotion off to a nice start here, building up his devotion count. If we see maybe a turn 3 Thassa or Nightfall Spectre held up by the old Master of Waves, Ryan will probably be in some serious trouble, but he's going to start by attacking here with Scavenging Ooze. And of course, this attack represents a couple different things.
Yeah, it could be Glorka and Rampager, or it could also just be that Brian's attacking for free because it's basically a freebie. You see the Rampager here.
And this is one of the interactions I really like with Scavenging Ooze and the Rampager, in that you're able to make the Scavenging Ooze a 6/6 Trampler because of Blood Rush, and then remove the Rampager because there's a creature in your graveyard. It'll actually make it into a 7-power creature. Trample over some damage, 7-4, of course, is 3, so that will go down to 17. But it's a good interaction there.
Yeah. Little additional fanciness there for Brian.
Thassa is the card drawn here for Kyle.
And you see, the Mono Blue Devotion deck, it's in these sort of games, you're basically relying on Master Ways to play catch-up because Kyle can't really brawl with Brian's red-green creatures.
Yeah, not at all.
Too many pump spells, too many creature removal spells, and just bigger stats for mana ratios than what Kyle has. So he's either got to keep Brian off balance with various flyers and tricks, or he's got to use Master Ways to stabilize the ground.
Nightfall Spectre going to be the follow-up play there for Abell after the attack with the Judge's Familiar. Life totals are tied up here at 17 apiece. Both players kind of jockeying for position to get ahead on the board. Braun is going to start by attacking with a Scavenging Ooze. That is, of course, a 3/3 here, so no good blocks there for Abell. And now BBD is going to follow up with a Pelukrinos, one of the best cards that Green can play against this deck.
Yeah, Kyle has access to some number of rapid hybridizations, I believe.
We're taking a look because he only has one.
Now,
oftentimes in mono blue, a lot of the cards, there's not a lot of wiggle room in the deck. You'll find some versions have a couple copies of Cyclonic Rift, some versions will have a couple copies of Rapid Hybridization. If you're like Greg Hatch from his Invitational runner-up, he had main deck Domestications. Kyle has 2 copies of Mizium Skin in his main deck, but at the end of the day, the answer for Pelukrinos, there is a singleton, and it is 1 Rapid Hybridization to get that off of the board immediately.
And you're seeing, Brian's deck is chock full of just a lot of individually powerful threats. The Mono Blue Devotion deck has to play some number of Judge's Familiar / sort of these middling, inefficient creatures.
Garbage is the word you're looking for.
Garbage.
Yeah.
To set up its devotion count, to make sure it curves out, to facilitate Thassa and Master Ways and all that. And Brian's able to play just much more individually powerful threats.
Heaven forbid they print something in Born to the Gods, a better 1-drop or better 2-drop for the deck. Not to say the Tidebinder, Major Frostborn Weird are bad 2-drops. The 1-drops are rather lacking, but I mean they of course serve a purpose, which is to turn on this particular card in Thassa or the Master of Waves that's in Kyle's hand. Those are the cards that really make the deck tick. So you do have to play some lesser cards like Judge's Familiar and Gale Rider Sliver to be able to turn on these cards. But as we have seen over the past couple of months, the payoff is certainly worth it.
Yeah. You see Brian, I believe, just peeled back a Domri, which is a pretty big draw here.
He's got some nice options here. Domri being able to fight with Pelucranos, potentially Scavenging Ooze, or he can just activate the Monstrosity on Pelucranos, especially if he has a 5th land. Now, of course, he'll probably want to save the Pelucranos to be able to take care of Master of Waves with the Monstrosity activation. It being green, Domri being red, won't be able to do what he wants to do with that. As he's going to deploy the Planeswalker here, he's going to fight the Nightveil Spectre and the Pelucranos. So we'll see if there's a rapid hybridization, which there is not. So Pelucranos gets the job done there, and it can actually feel free to attack right now too.
Yeah, that was a really, that was a pretty gutsy move there by Brian. If Kyle had a rapid hybridization, that would have been Brian's entire turn. But with no rapid hybridization, Brian gets to really advance his board this turn. And like you said, keep Pelucranos available to deal with Master of Waves if it gets to that point.
So into the red zone, Brian is going to come here, and the nice thing here is that the attack with Pelucranos is safe because it does have 2 damage on it from the fight. And obviously, Judge's Familiar is not going to be able to deal the necessary lethal damage, and Thassa is not active right now.
Well, I believe that Brian targeted the Ooze, and the reason that is he still has access to green mana with the Frostborn Weird in Kyle's graveyard to allow the Ooze to survive in combat against the Judge's Familiar.
Okay,
Kyle wanted to make a block, but
gotcha.
Your larger point is true that Brian's attacks are totally safe here. Gets to come across for quite a bit of damage.
See, Abell's life total is going to move down to 5. He's going to scry with Thassa to start the turn. He has another Thassa in his hand. I believe, again, he does have Master Waves in his hand, but Master Waves is blanked by the Hydra that's in play right now. And certainly it seems like, again, as you mentioned, the card quality in the Green Red Monsters deck is very, very high. It's about drawing the right cards at the right time to be able to kind of blank what Mono Blue Devotion can do. And the fact that he's able to do that right now with Pelucranos blanking Master of Waves versus the card that would be able to actually catch Kyle back up is certainly a bonus.
Yes.
You see a Cloud from Raptor is going to come in, and now Master of Waves is going to join the party. Some evolution triggers are going to go onto the stack, so Cloud from Raptor is going to get a little bit bigger here. Master of Waves is going to put a couple of tokens into play.
And you can see that Brian was saying sure to Kyle announcing his evolve triggers and all that. Brian already has in his mind that he's just going to gun down this Master of Waves with Pelucranos and get close to finishing this game off.
Pelucranos is a really, really interesting card. It feels like it's kind of the one card that if you're looking to play a green deck, it's the reason that you want to be playing a green deck. It's kind of the common piece among all of these mid-range green decks that we do see in the format. And I know just upon its release, it was a card that people thought would be pretty good. I don't know if anyone expected it to be this good. It's a really good card.
Yeah, it's not the most efficient thing to be doing against pure control decks because it's a legendary 4-mana 5/5 that, the extra copies are bad and the text box doesn't matter very much. But if your opponent is fighting back with medium or small-sized creatures at all, Pelucranos is among the best things to be doing in Standard. Quite possibly the best thing to be doing.
Monstrosity activation is going to take care of the Master of Waves. You'll see an attack there from a 4/4 Scavenging Ooze and a 6/6 Pelucranos. Whichever one Cloud from Raptor gets in front of, because that's the only blocker, Brian will be able to activate the Scavenging Ooze to make it a lethal attacker since he did just kill a Master of Waves, or Pelucranos will be lethal on its own. So Kyle assesses the situation, concedes the game, and BBD does win a game number 1 here with Green Red Monsters over Mono Blue Devotion.
So looking at our sideboard options here, Brian with access to 4 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, which I assume will be coming in here.
I think it's a safe assumption.
He has Auroric Thar, doesn't seem very well placed. 2 copies of Destructive Revelry, I don't think he's going to touch. 2 copies of Plummet might be fine here. There are Nightveil Specters and other small flyers available in the deck. 2 copies of Shock. 2 copies of Mizium Mortars, I would expect Mortars to come in here. And 2 copies of Chandra Pyromaster in the board as well, which I do not like very much, in my experience having played Red, White, Burn a lot against Blue Devotion. But it's possible that Brian's structure is different and he can facilitate a little more reliably.
Sign of a healthy Standard format when Shock and Plummet are in your sideboard.
Yeah.
I think that's a I think that's just a really good sign of
How
just a good format where you can play narrow effects like that and it being correct.
and how nuts and bolts, Magic 101 is that. My opponent has small creatures, so I got some shocks in my sideboard.
Yep.
They got some flying creatures, so I got some opponents in my sideboard.
Yep.
My opponent's a blue deck, I got some Mistcutter Hoggers in my sideboard. My opponent may have artifacts and or enchantments, so I got some Destructive Revelries. It's like, this is really easy to understand what's going on here, which is great.
Taking a look here at Kyle's sideboard, 1 Curse of the Swine, 2 Domestication, 2 Jace Architect of Thought, an additional Biden of Thassa to go along with his 2 in his main deck, a 3rd Museum Skin on the sideboard, a Dispel, 3 Gainsays, 2 Rapid Hybridization, and 2 Negates. I think the easy one to start with here is 2 Rapid Hybridization because he needs to take care of Pelucranos on site.
Yeah.
Because you can see exactly how powerful it is, especially with his reliance on Master of Ways to be able to stabilize the board. Curse of the Swine is an interesting one. I think that's going to come in just as an additional answer to take care of Pelucranos in this matchup.
Yeah, I've played against Mono Blue Devotion quite a bit online. My opponents were bringing in, when I was playing Boros, because some of the creatures that you have are better than the Swine tokens, obviously. Mm-hmm. And it also means that Brave the Elements no longer kills you because it makes a bunch of green tokens. I would imagine it also comes in here just because Brian's pound-for-pound threats to the Pelucranoses and the Stormbreath Dragons of the world are so big that they're pretty efficient to be targeting with Curse of the Swine.
Domestication, as far as targets are concerned, I don't think there are very many good ones.
There is Elvish Mystics, pretty good, I guess, relatively speaking.
Yeah, it's a good card.
Scavenging Ooze in some corner case scenarios, but otherwise we're talking about all Boon Satyrs, Gore Clan Ramagers, Stormbreath Dragons, Pelucranoses. Domestication is very poorly suited to fight the types of threats that Brian's bringing to the table.
The additional Bite of Thassa, I think, stays at home here as well, as I think Brian is going to be the aggressor in most cases, but you often see that card be at its best against control decks that are trying to keep the board clear. So I think we'll see that stay in the board and probably the other 2 come out. The additional Museum Skin I don't think is going to be great in this matchup. I think there are cases where it could be good, but I don't know if you want 3 copies of that.
I mean, Brian's got a couple, he's got Pelucranos, Dolmery, presumably some target of removal. It's not like Museum Skin's a blank here.
And then last but certainly not least is Jace Architect of Thought, which is, I think, the most interesting card in the sideboard here because Kyle has 2 in his main deck. He has 2 additional ones in his sideboard. However, Jace's +1 is, in this particular matchup, not great. Jace's +1 is fine, but, in other matchups, when you're playing against mono red or white-based aggro decks, like the Boros or Orzhov aggro decks that we've seen, Jace's +1 is actually quite good. In this particular matchup, because the creatures are so big, it doesn't really seem like it's that great. It feels like a glorified divination.
Yeah, I think that, the tools that Kyle has to contain Brian's big threats efficiently, the rapid hybridizations and Curse of the Swines of the world, are going to be more powerful here than they are against decks like Boros or mono red, let's say. But his board control tools, like Jace and like Master of Waves, are likely to be less powerful here because Brian can either remove them easily or overpower them relatively easily. So I think Kyle, if I'm in Kyle's seat, I think the trick of this matchup is I had to be more mana and tempo efficient. He can't win the game going pound for pound. We saw that in the first game. Brian was even missing land drops for most of the game. But the individual threats he was playing were so powerful, and Kyle kind of got off to a slowish start. I think Kyle really needs to get out in front and then use his various tricks to prevent Brian from doing anything too powerful.
Now, I think one of the interesting things here, as you see both players are going to lay out their hands, Kyle's going to be on the play this game, is, who's the aggressor in this particular matchup. In that last game that we watched, Brian was the aggressor the entire time, and Kyle was just unable to catch up. So can either of these decks play defense in an appropriate manner, I think is going to be really interesting to watch.
And Kyle, in his opening 7, has a Tiebinder Mage, which I have to assume is one of his best tools in this matchup.
I would like to believe that is the case. His Cloudfin Raptor is going to start the show here for the Mono Blue Devotion player. Going to follow that up with another Cloudfin Raptor and pass the turn back. So waiting for something to lock down with the Tiebinder Mage.
Kyle just begging for a targetable creature.
And Sylvan Carrier did so.
Not quite.
Not yet. Now, I can't imagine that he just pulls the trigger on the Tiebinder Mage without getting its value.
Yeah, I mean, if he has anything at all productive to do this turn, I imagine he waits.
You see his hand, he has a Master of Waves, he has that Tiebinder Mage, he has a Rapid Hybridization, and I think he has a Curse of the Swine as well, so he actually doesn't have anything good to do right now. So do you deploy the Tiebinder Mage, not getting any value and just using it for an evolution trigger?
I think he's got to sit on his hands for a little while. If Kyle was, let's say, evolving those from 1 power flyers to 2 power flyers, that would be a different case. But just starting to attack Brian for 2 is not going to get you very far, and that Tidebinder Mage potentially has so much value at some other stage of the game.
So Brian's going to tap. He's going to start his turn with 3 mana. He has not played a land yet. So we'll see if he does have something to accelerate out here and how he wants to deploy his threats. Because you can see right now in his hand, he does have a Domri. He also has a Mistcutter Hydra hanging out there as well. Again, something that, actually 2 cards that Tidebinder Mage can't do anything to. He also has a Sylvan Caryatid in his hand. I think he might go about deploying that. He's going to go with Scavenging Ooze. That's going to resolve. And now here's another Caryatid and passing the turn back. So finally, Tidebinder Mage can do something.
Yeah. Although now with Kyle drawing his 4th land, does he actually want to spend his turn casting Tidebinder Mage is now the question.
We'll see how he wants to go about his 4th turn, because he obviously wants to get the ball rolling here. You know, him being on the play, he wants to kind of put Brian on the back foot as fast as he can. And it looks like he's going to go with a Master of Waves, so you're going to get triggers here for those Cloudfin Raptors. Those guys are going to evolve into 2 3s. 3 elemental tokens are going to come into play to do the devotion count. And now the damage can finally begin in the air.
So now this is a big test here to see if Brian is capable of answering that Master Waves.
It's interesting too, because you know it really depends on how familiar Kyle is with the green-red monsters list. Because again, it's not a deck that has seen a lot of play. Yes, it has been written about a little bit. Again, Chris Van Meter did write an article about his Super IQ win on Wednesday. But again, this isn't a deck that you go to a tournament expecting to play against. So, you know, does he have any fear of a card like Mizium Mortars, which, you know, we have the benefit of knowing does not exist outside of, I think there may be 1 copy in Brian's deck list, but do you actually have a fear of that card? Do you care to play around? Do you care to play around a card like Flames of the Firebrand? Or, you know, there's just a lot of different things he could have in this situation.
No, there's definitely a lot of potential tools, and I've run into various red green lists online a variety of times. And the lists are all very different from one another. It's hard to peg them necessarily for a very specific 75 or within an 80 card list.
Stormwrath Dragon going to come and play here for Brian, and he's just going to pass the turn back. So now he's on defense, and you know we've talked about that Tidebinder Mage quite a bit. There's actually another one off the top there for Kyle. Can lock down that dragon, let the beats keep flying in the air.
It's a pretty rough turn. I've been in this spot playing red-based decks against Mono Blue Devotion, and when you're playing blockers and saying go, they have a lot of tools to punish you for that sort of play.
You know, Curse of the Swine might not be the most appetizing card right now, but it does do a nice job of taking care of that dragon, and it looks like that's what's going to get cast right now. So Curse of the Swine is going to turn that into a little boar.
And you see Kyle leave his mana up. Very strong representation of rapid hybridization in his hand, as he could have easily cursed for 1 more mana and taken care of the Scavenging Ooze as well.
And the important thing here with Curse of the Swine is that it does exile creatures, so the interaction with Scavenging Ooze, being able to remove a creature to gain life and pump itself, not going to come up at this particular point. Very interesting card here, Curse of the Swine. Not an effect that you see often from blue. But I think a really, really potent sideboard card. Obviously very good against these green decks that have some weapons that you have to get off of the board. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this card, you know, be good down the road. It's just a unique option available to blue decks.
No, it definitely, you know, it's not very efficient if you're just playing a random control deck because you still care about the 2/2s. You still have to be playing to the board to invalidate the 2/2 tokens you're giving them, which adds a little bit of fanciness / deck building requirements to it. But I've definitely been on the bad end of some Curse of the Swines from Mono Blue Devotion for sure.
You see an attack here from the elemental tokens and the Cloudfin Raptors. I was being a boar there for a moment. Thankfully, I'm out of there so I don't get killed, because I think I may have been on blocking duty there momentarily. But now we do have our 2/2 boar in play. Board state is up to par, and we'll see exactly how Brian wants to go about blocking here in this situation, if he wants to block at all.
Yeah, I do like this attack from Kyle, as he's sort of hedging against the potential Mizium Mortars, trading off some portion of Brad's board here.
Yeah. You see a Caryatid get in front of Elemental Token, and Boar going to get in front of another one. 2, 4, 5, 6 damage is going to come across. A little bit of trade. And after the dust settles, Kyle's going to pass the turn back. Brian's going to untap with access to 6 mana to begin his turn and a Scavenging Ooze. And that Stormbreath Dragon, again, that you guys do see there at the top of the screen is exiled from Curse of the Swine. It is not in the graveyard.
Yeah, and this is pretty critical now as Brian has just drawn a Domery, and it would be really good for him if he was able to get his Ooze to be a 3/3 to start fighting these Raptors.
Those are the things that are causing the most problems at this point. Really interesting because, again, I don't know. You know, we saw in the first game where Kyle wasn't able to play good defense. You know, he was on the back foot the entire game. He had Judge's Familiar and some other things kind of floundering around. A Thassa that never really got active. Brian having a Pelucranos making Master of Waves be highly irrelevant. In this game, you see Brian trying to play the role of defense and having a lot of trouble.
Yes. Well, his deck is much softer in the air than it is on the ground.
Yeah.
He had some removal spells last game to support him, but not this game.
So now here comes a Mistcutter Hydra. That's going to be for 4. And now here's an Elvish Mystic. So Brian's trying to clutter up the board a little bit here, but as you mentioned, not going to do anything against those flyers. And that's the primary problem right now. So he does need to be able to get something in play to be able to take care of those. Domri is certainly a step in the right direction, but he's in some trouble right now.
And he has Mortars as a big draw, too, as
Yep.
he has access to 3 red through his Caryatid. So Brian certainly with some big draws, potentially, but like you said, he's starting to falter a little bit to this flying attack that Kyle's been able to generate.
So Kyle untaps his army and his lands. He takes a draw step, and we'll see what he found. Now, don't forget, he does have those 2 copies of Tidebinder Mage still in his hand. He has not used those. He's had one of those since the beginning of the game, drew one in the mid-game, and has not had any reason to deploy them as this game has progressed. We also know about the rapid hybridization that he does have in his hand as well. So his hand is not empty by any means.
Right. I think, you know, Kyle probably has some amount of trepidation of just running them out there because he has to be worried about Mizium Mortars.
Yeah. That's the one that you think of from the red decks here, as there is Tidebinder Mage. It's going to come into play. It's going to target. Who does it want? It wants a Scavenging Ooze. He's just going to pass the turn back. So he's going to hold the other Tidebinder Mage and still has that rapid hybridization in the grip. As Braun going to untap, he'll draw a land. Let's see if he can start to build a bit of a comeback here, because he is he's sitting at 6. He's got 2 flyers to take care of, but the rest of the game is actually going okay right now for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, you know, he's got the ground pretty well locked up. And his draw steps, pound for pound, are going to be more powerful than Kyle's. It's just, can he prevent himself from getting nickel and dimed out by these little flyers?
So now here's the Planeswalker in main phase 1 from Brian, asking if that does resolve, as some mono blue decks do play negates, and some play dissolve, but the Planeswalker is going to slide in here. Now how does he choose to use it?
Imagine we're going to be fighting through a Mistcutter Hydra. That's the safest thing to be using to brawl.
And that's what's going to happen. The Mistcutter Hydra and Cloudfin Raptor are going to have a fight. Pretty favorable one.
Yeah. So now this is a spot where Kyle could actually rapid hybridization his own flyer to evolve his other Raptor to a 3-power flyer and put Brian on a 2-turn clock here.
Well, you saw the play, as did Kyle. That's the play he's going to make. So rapid hybridization will take place. Evolution of the Cloudfin Raptor also happens here. And Brian is going to, he's going to play now. I wonder what the follow-up spell is. Don't forget, there is one creature in the graveyard right now, so Scavenging Ooze is actually going to be able to gain a life and push Brian up to 7. And now here's a replacement Domri, which is huge right now.
Really powerful with the new way that Legend rule works now. You can now use his Domri to fight and finish off the other Raptor, and now start to slot back into this game. Again, Kyle not really able to attack on the ground very effectively.
It was a really, really big play there from Brian, as now he's able to take care of both flyers in 1 turn, and the rapid hybridization is gone as well. So if a Pelucranos does come off the top here for BBD, he can actually really turn this game around.
BBD might actually just be dead to the leftover Tidebinder Mage that we are aware of, because he has 2 blockers against 5 attackers. So he might actually just
3, 4, 5. He has 1, 2. He's got 3 blockers here with the Mystic, the Caryatid, and the Mistcutter.
But -1 blocker if there's a Tidebinder.
Ah, sure, okay. Because he plays a Tidebinder Mage and he taps the Mystic, so there's 2 blockers. So he blocks the 2 biggest creatures, which is the 3/3 and the 2/2. So yeah, I think we're looking. Well, because there's a creatures in the graveyard, the Mystic can
Oh,
actually
right,
tap
yeah,
for
yeah, you
green
can gain
and go
one,
up to
yep.
7, yeah, which is huge at this point.
So yeah, he can gain 1 here and be able to block the 3/3. So
Well, this might make things a little bit easier, as a Thassa is going to come into play here for Kyle. Now, its Devotion, it being a 5/5 god, is not on right now. If he does deploy a Tidebinder Mage, it will be. But I think more importantly for Kyle, maybe he wants to do a little bit of unblockable action to take care of that Domri.
yeah, I like using his mana this year, rather this turn. I don't know if I would go after Domri here. I think I just want to shorten this game.
Okay.
And yeah, it looks like he's going down that road.
Yeah, it's definitely a decision we made, right? If you want to, as you're going to see 2 activations of the Scavenging Ooze going to knock Brian up to 5. Do you want to shorten it? Can you actually shorten it in such a way to be able to clear things up before Brian actually uses Domri's plus for it to be relevant?
Yeah. I mean, if the only card he's worried about at this point is Mysium Mortars, then the Domri in play doesn't do anything about that.
Sure, because it can't find it, obviously. But how scared are you? How scared are you? Excuse me, of Pelucranos right now?
Pelucranos is not that. It's not that bad for business, right? I mean, it's not great, but it's hard for Brian to have enough mana to contain everything that you have in play. And he really only needs to get 1 shot at Brian with all of his mana to kill him with Thassa.
Brian checks the top with Domri, did not find a creature. So we'll see what he's going to do with the Elvish Mystic here. Looks like he might be removing something with Scavenging Ooze. Not quite sure. Looks like just an attack. Passes the turn back. Take a draw. Here for Kyle. Gets to control the draw, of course, with Thassa and Scry.
Kyle really thinking this one over. Takes it.
Going to play an island. And it looks like he kept the land so that he can play Tidebinder Mage, lock something down, and maybe gets 2 things unblockable to try to finish this game off this turn. And also it's going to turn on Thassa with the Devotion count, because now 2 from the Tidebinder, 2 from the other one, 1 from the Master, and 1 from the Thassa itself. Going to give him more than enough Devotion. He's going to attack with both these creatures. And Brian is going to move the dice over and concede this game. So we're going to go to a 3rd and final one here between Kyle Abell and Brian Braun to win. Mono Blue Devotion versus Green Red Monsters. It's even up.
Yeah, and when I was talking a little bit about the matchup before we got into the second game, I mentioned Kyle needs to be the aggressor and use his tempo and tricks to sort of outpace Brian in the game, because he can't go pound for pound, and he was able to execute that there in that second game.
Yeah, again, it just feels like both decks have some difficulty playing defense. Now with Brian going to be on the play in this particular game, we'll see if Kyle is able to actually mount a defense and turn the corner and get back on offense, or if it's going to be similar to Game 1, where he was never able to really mount a suitable defense and just kind of got ran over.
Yeah, just got punked out by little flyers.
Yeah.
Had no absence of powerful things going on, just couldn't quite. His Stormbreath Dragon wasn't able to, Kyle was able to remove that. You really need to be handling the Mono Blue Devotion deck, in my mind, with spells and not creatures.
Okay.
Because they have a lot of tools to break up you blocking.
Yes.
But just playing removal spells against their threats is reasonably efficient. So, not that Brian had a choice in that game. His hand was what it was. He had to play his Stormbreath Dragon and block. More of my point is that the Mono Blue Devotion deck is really well situated to fight that kind of battle, but is less equipped to handle just pinpoint removal spells being played on his creatures.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ways that Brian interacts in this particular matchup, as you mentioned, are creatures. Pelucranos being the biggest one in this matchup. And with a deck that has access to Rapid Hybridization, Curse of the Swine, other things, as you mentioned, Mono Blue does a nice job of fending off creatures.
Yeah. What I like about, Brian's deck from in this matchup is that the Mono Blue deck can often use Rapid Hybridization on its own creatures to break up removal spells. Mm-hmm. And if you're playing a deck like Boros or you're playing a deck like Mono Red, them having a 3/3 on defense really matters. I mean, that goes pound for pound with a lot of your creatures and is bigger than a lot of your creatures. The Green Red Monster deck gets to completely ignore that. A 3/3 that's on the ground has nothing to do with what's going on in the game. Brian's creatures are all 4/4s and bigger. So another nice little wrinkle about the Red Green Monster Sack. Now, obviously, the rapid hybridizations are very efficient being pointed at Brian's own stuff, but he has to worry much less about his removal being targeted, being broken up by rapid hybridization on Kyle's own creature, because he doesn't care that much about a 3/3.
If you are just joining us home, we do appreciate it. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series. First show of 2014 here in Indianapolis, Indiana. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGINDY for your tweets. We'll be checking them all weekend long as we do make our way through 11 rounds of standard action today. It's going to be a late one tonight.
And, you know, what a way to start the year attendance-wise and, you know, 700 plus for this event.
Yeah.
Really impressive. The Midwest always holds it down.
They do.
Always.
They do. People come from everywhere to come play these things, but it's easy when Indiana is the central point of everything.
Yep.
Again, don't forget, we'll be doing our 11 rounds today. We'll be doing our elimination rounds tomorrow, starting with our quarterfinals at 8 a.m. Eastern. We'll give away 3 months of premium then. Then we'll do our semifinals. We'll give away 6 months of premium. And then our finals and a full year of premium. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll do legacy action, which I am looking forward to. It's going to be a fun and busy weekend. I think it's going to be well attended, as this one already has been. We'll see how things break tomorrow, but we are going to be in store for one heck of a weekend here in Indy, as Kyle's going to send it back, and Brian looks happy enough.
Yeah, it looks like Brian's hand is a little more removal heavy than we saw, you know, clearly in the second game. He has Midzian Mortars and a Flush Blood as well.
Yeah. I want to see how Flesh Blood is going to play a role in this deck. I know that's a card that Brad Nelson played at Pro Tour Theros in his red-green deck. Again, another red-green deck that didn't see a lot of play afterward, but he said that he was very, very fond of that card. A lot of people did not play around the combination of Flesh Blood and Gorkland Rampager, understandably so. And it seems like, you know, they're kind of bringing it back since it has fallen off the radar in a big way, and it's a 1-2 punch that can really kill the opponent out of nowhere.
Yep.
I want to see the Wasteland Vipers come back. That's what we're missing here.
It's been a while.
Yeah, Wasteland Viper. Brad told me some great stories of him using that at the Pro Tour, especially in combination with Pelucranos and its monstrosity.
Yeah, the decks that I play are, you know, I'm not the type of deck that gets blown out by something like Wasteland Viper plus Pelucranos, because Pelucranos kills all of my guys anyway.
Sure.
But I have a deck where playing a 1/2 death touch blocker is fine.
Yep.
So I had a lot of people after that Pro Tour casting Wasteland Vipers against me online, and you know, I was just thinking to myself, what's going on here? Because I kind of missed the memo. But now I know.
Yeah. You can thank Brad for that, as Temple of Abandon is going to put the top card on the bottom as we are underway here in game number 3. Kyle going to pass the turn back with no 1-drop. And Brian has a Sylvan Caryatid. Passes the turn back.
And no 1-drop is a big deal for Brian.
Yeah.
Again, his fights against the pacing of the game, given enough time, enough breathing space, he's going to definitely be able to do things more powerful than what Kyle does. But it's just surviving that initial rush.
Stomping Ground comes into play untapped. Here is a Pelucranos. This is problem number 1 here for Kyle. Does he have Curse this one? Does he have Rapid Hybridization? Tidebinder Mage is certainly okay, but it's not great.
Right. And even Rapid Hybrid, or even Curse of the Swine, which is fine for Kyle here, Brian gets to go, okay, fine, untap, attack you for 3, and presumably add something else to his board. So the pacing of the game really critical here.
Fossa going to come into play. So Kyle trying to smooth out his draws, trying to get his Devotion online. But in the meantime, he's staring down at 5/5. Now, I think if you're looking for positives on the Mono Blue Devotion side, I think Brian's hand is full of quite a bit of lands, and he has a Midzian Mortars and a Flesh Blood. So I don't think he has any more action as far as creatures concerned. He might have a Rampager hanging out of there. I could be incorrect about that, but he doesn't have a very, very fast start.
Definitely no Stormbreath Dragon or Planeswalker to follow this up, follow up with, for sure.
So see how Brian wants to navigate this turn. You can see he's taking his time here a little bit, trying to figure out what the best course of action is, because it does look like he does have that Gorkland Rampager in his hand, so he has the mega combo of Rampager plus Flesh Blood. Does he want to, you know, play a 4/4? Or does he want to hold that? And it looks like 4/4 is attractive, so he is going to play that. Going to play Stomping Ground tapped and pass the turn.
When you still have Mortars and Pelucranos in play, I want to just get as much pressure on the board as possible.
See a Scry here from Thossingham from the top card on the bottom there for Kyle. He'll take a draw step. Draw is Rapid Hybridization.
See if how Kyle wants to try to start fending some of this off.
And there's a Tidebinder mage to start. Pelucranos going to get shut down and passing the turn back.
I think this may be where we see the debut of the Mizium skin. This might be that turn.
Brian takes a draw step here. Couldn't quite make out what that card was, but again, he does have Flesh Blood and Mizium Orders in his hand, and we do know that Kyle does have Mizium Skin in his hand.
I believe it was a Storm Breath Dragon he just drew.
That is a powerful magic card.
Yep. Certainly here it is. And again, if I'm in Brian's spot, I'm probably just happy to play Storm Breath and, yep.
Get in the red zone.
Just get it on in. Don't get too fancy. This is just adding more creatures to the board and attacking is the best way to be playing around things like Rapid Hybridization and Curse of the Swine.
Sure. And there is Rapid Hybridization. It's going to take down the dragon. And for Brian, that's an exchange that, I think you'd rather have the flyer in play, but at the same time now, if you're going to activate Monstrosity on your Pelucranos, you know that it's safe in a certain regard, because with how Monstrosity works and Rapid Hybridization works is Monstrosity works upon resolution. So if you Monstrosity and the creature is killed, the Monstrosity trigger doesn't resolve. Now that there is no Rapid Hybridization there, you're probably feeling pretty confident that your Monstrosity activation on Pelucranos is going to happen. However, we know there's a Mizium skin hanging out, so we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're attacking and you're running Kyle out of resources, you're pretty happy with how the pace of the game is in Brian's Sea. It's also nice that, given what's on Kyle's side of the board right now, that Rapid Hybridization token is a real card. I mean, Kyle doesn't have the 3/3 invalidated. His stats is not on. He hasn't played Master of the Ways, what have you, so.
All right, now here's a Frostmourne, so now Thassa is on. You see Island Mutavault there for Kyle as far as untapped mana is concerned, but the Devotion is on, and that means that the God is on, and a 5/5 blocker is here. Is this thing feeling frisky?
It's a pretty bold attack when you have Mizium Skin to, in theory, protect your Devotion count.
Yeah.
If you thought it was likely that your Thassa was just going to get shut off because of Pelucranos or some removal spell, I can see getting in here, but with Mizium Skin backup, I feel like you want to kind of.
It's going to be Tidebinder
okay.
blockable. Okay.
All right, so he's same logic. He's happy to. He believes his Thassa is going to survive.
Sure. I kind of like this attack too, where it's my Tidebinder mage, it's not going to block. It's bad if it's blocking, so I might as well get into the red zone and be attacking with it.
Players, when you do finish your match, please make sure that both you and
I believe we may be seeing an overloaded Mortars here shortly.
Yeah, you see Brian draws his card for the turn, considering his options. What 1-mana spells do I have to play around at this juncture? Again, if you think of mono blue and 1-mana spells, the only one that you typically think of is Rapid Hybridization. You don't think of Mizium Skin being a card that's seeing a heavy amount of play, if at all.
Yeah.
Now, Brian is a player who does play a lot of Magic, plays a lot of Magic online, so maybe he has run into that corner case where he has gotten blown out by a Mizium Skin and is, running that through his mind right now, as he does play a 6th land, and I think we are going to see an overload of Mizium Orders.
We'll see if Kyle has any sort of response here.
So Ryan says, I want to deal 4 damage to all your creatures and unlock my Pelucranos. Is that okay?
Perhaps saving his Frostborn Weird here with the Mizium Skin I could see happening, but.
And Mizium Skin does give everything, it gives +0/+1.
Yeah.
When overloaded, it would get it to everything and untargetability.
Well, of course, an overloaded Mortars doesn't target, so
yeah.
he can save his weird or nothing at all.
I think you probably got to save the weird, right?
Yeah. I don't think this Mizium Skin's getting much better.
Yeah, I don't think so now either. You can just see the kind of role that Mizium Orders plays in this particular matchup.
Yep.
And there is a Mizium Skin. It is going to save the Frostburn Weird. I use save very lightly.
Bang.
Because I have a feeling that some creatures are going to get in the red zone here, and Frostburn Weird may be on chump block duty. So here comes the Frog Lizard, and here comes the Gorkland Rampager. Of course, 4 damage on that Frostburn Weird, so if it were to block anything, it would die.
And
Brian
we'll
just
see.
passes the turn back. And this is kind of the situation very reminiscent of Game 1 where, a lot of the time when a Mono Blue Devotion player is behind the 8-ball like this, they are oftentimes looking for Master of Waves. And because of Pelukrinos being in play, that's just not going to get the job done here.
Right.
So Kyle is going to take a look at the top card of his deck. He's going to scry.
And for different reasons, the mono blue and the mono black devotion decks, some of the best recipes for beating them involve getting out in front really fast.
Yes. Kyle going to play another copy of Tidebinder Mage. Going to turn on the Devotion again with Thassa. We'll see what he targets with this. He's going to target the Hydra. Passes the turn back. Not quite sure if that's going to be able to turn this game back around for him again, because we have mentioned multiple times that there is a Flesh Blood in Brian's hand. And he draws
Another one.
a second copy.
I was really hoping that we would see some scavenge action here. Dragon in the graveyard. Carried in play.
And as you guys do see Flesh Blood on the screen, you're going to see Flesh Blood go upstairs, an extension of the hand. So Braun Duin is going to win this match over Kyle Abell. 2-1. Green-Red Monsters moves on to 2-0. And I know that there are at least 2 people playing this deck this weekend. There is Braun Duin, who we see on the camera, and there is Chris Van Meter, who again won a Super IQ last weekend with this deck. He's playing it again this weekend. He's off to a 1-0 start. Ruben Wrestler sat down with him in the sideboard as well. So we will have that.